today, I think what we want to do for this first meeting is we want to switch the screen around and turn it to you, and then we're going to ideally see some things in your in the ERP system, in your math system, and we'll ask you some questions along the way, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
So let me give you control. I'm going to make you the presenter here, and we're recording this for our engineers as well, just so we have it for them.
Okay.
I see your screen right now.
Okay.
All right. So do you want to bring us into the math system?
We're in it now. I've got the bar up here. I can go like this if it's easier on you.
Yeah.
Yep. That makes it a little easier. And just for reference sake, do you have access to the global system?
Yes.
All right. We may jump into that as well after this. If
I'm just going to have it open then.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'll bring that over when we need it.
All right. So I think that one place to start would be just to run through, say, some of the settings so we can see them. And by settings, for example, your chart of accounts. And general ledger.
I'm not used to doing it this way, so it might take me a while to find it. Okay, so we've got the maintain accounts and maintain natural accounts. In Global Shop, we've already got the accounts over there, so might need to just not worry about this part.
Well, the reason I want to see them is just because all of the transactions ultimately feed back to the accounts.
Gotcha.
So that's why I just want to,
we tried to keep as many of these natural accounts as we could to Global Shop, with the exception of we tried to pare it down a little bit. There are a few things that we wanted to track when we set up Mass 500 that we no longer care to track now that we're in Global Shop. So we pared it down a little bit.
Like what? Can you think of any examples of things that you might have pared down?
One of the revenue accounts is now gone. So we've got the revenue accounts in this section here. Equipment sales, I believe, is still there. We're no longer distinguishing between mobile and modular labs. We just made it one category.
Got it. So in that case you merge the accounts.
Correct.
Now the accounts that you might have changed, are they ones that were being used up until now? Like, are they still being used, or?
They are still being used in Mass 500. There were a couple of accounts we had to add just for the way we had to add a couple of accounts in Global Shop just because of the way they process things. Let's see if I can bring up the chart of accounts in Global Shop.
It'll be helpful just to see.
Okay, so here's the chart of accounts in Global Shop. Try and find one of the ones that were added. I can't remember where it was. Is overhead absorption was one. Booking variance, I believe, was one. So there are a couple accounts like that, that just the way that Global Shop processes things, which is different from Mass 500, we had to add. That absorption account is basically when we're entering, say, a router with the bill of materials on it, and it's booking those materials or the labor costs. In this case, it was what was that absorption account? Overhead absorption. So all the overhead is estimated, and when you have the actual costs in there, it backs out that overage or adds to what we were under through that overhead absorption account.
I gotcha.
And there's one for labor as well. So that process is slightly different in Global Shop than it is in Mass 500. So that's an account that I guess will only start to be used when we're in Global Shop.
Okay, so yeah, so for the accounts that were added from a migration standpoint, can you think of any reason why we need to worry about those accounts?
No.
Okay. I tend to agree from the way you described it. Now on the I think from here I get a sense that essentially the structure is very similar in terms of the accounts. You merged some accounts from Mass when you moved it over to Global, and then within Global you added some new accounts so that you could handle the way that they process certain transactions.
Okay.
Now, I think that the next thing to look at, which also relates to things that are on transactions, are within the Mass system. Can you jump over to, say, the items, like an item master, item list?
Now you're familiar with those inventory items that were in parts and vendors. The parts and vendors is actually the master inventory list that we have, and they were supposed to be adding parts into Mass 500 as they were added in parts and vendors. Now we already had I think Gene told you, we already had the data taken out of parts and vendors and brought over to Global Shop, so that part was done. But of course there were some that were added since we did that. But these are the parts. They're non-inventory, so there's no inventory numbers tied to any of these in Mass 500 right now. And I think there's around 10,000 or so.
So about 10,000 items here that are all non-inventory.
Correct.
And then you also have inventory items as well, you were saying?
We're not tracking any inventory in Mass 500.
Okay.
We will in Global Shop. So once we go live with it a few days before, we will get a physical count and get the inventory in there.
And the items that we're looking at here, you said that, I'll say, all except some new items have already been moved over to global?
Yes, I think I'll have to verify with Jean because she was handling that part. She went to go find us a projector real quick because we're winding up doing this in my office and we're not set up real convenient for both of us to see the screen. So we're going to see if we can set it up on a projector real quick. But as far as the parts from the inventory items for parts and vendors, we've got the relationships.
That's all we've got is the relationships.
But do we have the database that we can bring it in anytime we want, or we still have to?
Do we have the database? We have the ability to output every table in parts and vendors to Excel.
Okay, so we still got some work to do on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the relationships for the bill of materials is in Global Shop. The inventory items themselves are not in Global Shop. So we still have some work to do to get that spreadsheet around so we can import that.
Now, can you show me what you mean by within Global Shop, what you mean by the relationships being in there, just an example of one?
Remember where that was?
Maybe under bills of material. View bills of material.
Not under inventory, right? It's production. Material. View. Multi-level.
I don't know. You can tell we're still learning the system too.
Yep.
Okay, so like this one. So the relationship for this parent part number is set up with all the bills and materials that are associated with this top level parent.
And so in order for that to happen, doesn't that item need to already be in global?
You would think.
We asked the same.
But apparently it can be kind of a non-inventory part so that that part number becomes somewhat ad hoc. And so we have to import them all as inventory parts to have that full connection all the way back.
So yeah, again, just trying to get my head wrapped around it. So so these are the, right now in Mass 500, everything is being tracked as a non-inventory part. Is that right?
Correct.
And in Global Shop, they have both inventory parts, they have the ability to have the inventory parts which you're planning on using, as well as the bill of materials. But are they considered separate? Like, is the idea that you would have the same item as a non-inventory and an inventory part?
I'm sorry, one more time.
So after the migration, like after you start using Global Shop, are you going to have the same items set up in Global Shop, both inside this bill of materials here and also in a separate and some separate item list?
It'll end up merging into one list because this bill of material is just a reference. So that part number, like the first one, 113-0023-00, that's just a reference back to that part number. If that part number doesn't already exist in Global Shop, then it just becomes an open reference that doesn't go back to anything. If we have that part as an inventory part in Global Shop, then it will link to that inventory part.
Ah, got it. So here you have the bill of materials. You can it allows you to reference things that may or may not already exist.
Yes.
So that's why the idea is we would need to bring over the items and make sure that that these now do exist.
Mm-hmm.
That it's referencing. Now, when you're looking within an item record within Global Shop, I suspect that some of the fields are different in terms of, like, can you open up, say, what an item record might look like in Global Shop?
Hey, can we take a quick 2-minute break so Gina and I can set this up real quick?
Oh yeah, not a problem. Take your time, get the projector set up.
We're trying to do it while we're talking and it's not working.
We thought maybe we could split our attention, we multitaskers by nature, but
the somehow what might go.
Yeah, I got sold.
I think it's Friday.
The project manager. Should be okay. We can talk to them together.
I'm going to close this meeting down. Can I still use the same link on my laptop?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to close this one down and bring it back up on the laptop.
Sure.
Easier just to do everything. I'm going to take my picture now.
No, he didn't. I don't know.
Okay, I should be coming back up now.
All right. May need to re-give you control here. All right.
Yeah, no, all the way down. And then to your remote desktop. There you go, now right click.
All right, I'm going to make you the presenter again. Let's try this. Is it prompting you to take over?
Might be. So we just wasted our time.
This isn't working?
Yeah, I don't know why your projector's not
Ugh. No! Technical difficulties.
Hey, are you guys safe over there? Sounds like you're being attacked.
We're fighting.
I can take him. It's not a problem.
She doesn't have a chance.
There we go. And you have a huge spider in front of the projector screen.
My buddy.
All right. So here it should be asking him to take over. Is that what you were saying?
It should be.
Saw it.
If you want, I can take over and then give it back to you. It might pop up.
Yeah,
again.
if you could.
Yeah,
I think the prompt is hidden behind.
I think it got tired of waiting for us.
Right. Now. Sure, I make John. All right, it should prompt you again. Okay, I see an email.
Perfect. You won't see emails at all anymore.
Bye-bye.
There you go, John. You drive.
Okay. See your screen. We're connected.
Oh my. There we go.
Okay, so we were going to show you inventory parts. Was that where we were?
Yeah, within Global Shop, we're going to look at the inventory parts.
Okay. Can you get it over there? Right, unextend my screen again?
Well, no, you're in the remote desktop here. Move.
Move. Yay. Okay. Okay. Where were we?
All right. Do you have access to Global Shop?
Yes. And that open? So they're both up.
Yep. So can we look at the inventory part screen? Like if you were to manually add a new inventory part in Global Shop, I just want to see what that screen looks like.
I guess that's the under inventory items.
The resolution. Where the
Okay, so there's the part entry screen.
Got it. Yeah. So this helps. So the idea here is now let me ask. So the items that you have right now in mass are all of those going to be? I assume they're not all inventory items. Do you have is the idea that you're going to bring them over as inventory items, like most of them?
I think we were going to actually, hopefully there would be an Excel spreadsheet in the middle of the process, and I think we were going to weed it down.
Yeah, we were going to try and determine as many as we could that would be non-inventoriable items, but we haven't done that yet.
Yeah. So the idea is, let me just kind of recap, because this helps you. What I see here is normally when you have inventory parts, you are going to have different information than non-inventory parts. For example, you're going to have obviously things like track locations. You can also track different general ledger accounts, such as an asset account for inventory.
Right.
That you wouldn't necessarily have for non-inventory parts. Now, are you planning on using the location track? Like, are you planning on tracking the location of the inventory in Global Shop here?
Yes.
Yep.
So there'll be one main inventory room, but there will be a couple of bin locations on the shop floor.
Yeah.
Yet to be ironed out.
So, the way I think I'm understanding it, the way that normally this would work is, you're going to export the items, which are all non-inventory, from mass. You're going to get them into an Excel sheet. In the Excel sheet, there are going to be other fields that you're going to fill out that are related to
like the amount on hand, the quantity on hand, that'll be one of them, yeah.
Yep, quantity on hand, some cases location. Again, depending on the import tools, which we'll look at, sometimes it can just bring over that quantity on hand. Other times you might need to separately do an adjustment to bring the quantity on hand up to what it should be.
Well, we'll have to manually do it because there is no quantity.
Yeah, so you're going to manually figure out what those quantities are.
Yes.
And then some of the items you're going to keep non-inventory, and those are going to map to something else here within Global Shop that are the non-inventory parts, correct?
Correct.
So now, could you just click off this screen? And a lot of times I'm just going to ask you to click on the screen since we're recording it, and I just want to be able to see the interfaces to things. And now, I assume that there's a place to add those non-inventory items in here manually. Could we see where that might be?
I don't know how to do non-inventory in Global Shop, do you?
Would it be under Item Masters, maybe? I'm just guessing. Maybe, maybe not, because we're still under inventory items. So this might not be. While you're here,
I'm not positive.
While you're on this screen, click on that cost elements button on the bottom there, the little tab. Yep. Okay. So this is labor, material, overhead. Okay, just trying to get a sense of how it's organized. All right. So let's jump back into math. Now, on the items and inventory, is that something that you're looking for our help with in migrating, or do you have a firm handle on that piece, or should be determined?
I think that initially, I think that we're probably going to be able to do the inventory ourselves because we need to do the Excel section anyway.
Yeah.
I think that we have to manually go through a lot of our inventory anyway because it's not as clean as it needs to be. So I think that maybe we can do that ourselves.
All right. All right. Now let's we're making our way. Sooner or later, we're going to get to the transactions, the things things that are important, but we need to understand all the things related to it first. So I think the next thing to look at would be the customer and vendors. And I think you previously mentioned that you've gotten these over, the actual customer and vendor list. Is that right?
Just generic.
Yeah, we haven't been able to get all of the detail that we need off of them.
All right. So can you jump into a customer and give me an idea of what you have been able to get over?
I think it's a name and the primary contact and the primary address is all we've been able to pull.
You've been able to pull the customer name, primary contact, and the primary address.
Yeah, so basically everything on this screen, and then when you drill down to other addresses or other contacts, we haven't gotten any of that data. Like, I don't know, hopefully I got one here. So this one has one other address in there. And we're only able to get this one.
Got it. So you have the primary, but not the additional addresses.
This one doesn't have any additional contacts, but if there were any additional contacts in there, we wouldn't. All the stuff you need to drill into, we're not getting. Just the top level stuff.
What are other things that you're drilling into?
Those are just the two for addresses and contacts. They've got bill to and ship to. They could have several ship to addresses. This particular one has two. So that's one. I don't think the data that we brought over, I don't think it has a default sales account. I don't think.
We can actually pull up the spreadsheet. This is what we were easily able to connect to and export. If you want to go, that's on Q.
On Q.
Associate.
We'll show you the spreadsheet. All
right, good.
Associate.
Level.
He's got it open. Just see how far this goes here.
So you can see it's very much just the top level of data. I mean, we've got primary address and then ship address, but some of our customers have 5 ship addresses.
Yeah, and it just got one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a certifier that we sell parts to that we don't send them to his it's wherever he's working is where we'll send them to. So there could be a certifier in the system that's got 50 addresses that we've shipped out stuff to. Might not necessarily be used in the future, but could be.
I get it. Yeah. So when you got this information out of Mass, how did you get this out? Can you show me like what you did in Mass to pull this report out?
There's an Explorer within Mass that you can pretty much dump anything you want into Excel. Well, not anything you want, obviously, because we couldn't get everything, but just the top level data.
You can dump whatever they've already got in the tables.
Mm-hmm. So pretty much any area you go to in Mass has this Insights and Explore. I bring up the Explorer for customers.
Yep.
And anything that's in this predefined table, I can get in there. Looks like this one's got everything under the sun.
So this is what you were probably.
This is exactly what I was using, yeah.
But so yeah, and that's what I'm trying to understand, whether the limitation, there's limitations on, what limitations you run into on both sides. Here, you weren't able to necessarily get out the addresses, customer addresses, but I noticed there's an addresses thing on the left side there, under unapplied payments.
Yeah, so as you click on each customer, it pulls up their additional address.
But I don't think any of this will go to the Excel for us. Not that I've ever tried, but.
One at a time.
So this is one at a time. It lets you go to an Explorer. It lets you drill in to see the addresses. But
Yeah.
this tool here isn't letting you export it, at least from what you've done so far. All right, so those are definitely areas that will help, that will work to help you on the other things under the customer record, the addresses, the contacts that did not come over, that you weren't able to get out. And now, can you jump into the same concept on the vendor side of things?
You want to see the Explorer on it?
No, just actually go into the vendors themselves. And were you able to do the same thing on the vendors, export that basic main level information?
Wasn't there additional problems that we were having with the vendors?
Yes, basically, but I thought there was something else going on with that
I
one.
think that was an import problem because we were working through the data.
Okay, but basically it was the same thing.
And for vendors, do you have, like, what do you have drill into here? Do you have contacts as well and multiple addresses for vendors?
Pretty much the same as you'll see on the customer side. You got contacts, multiple contacts, addresses, multiple addresses. Default accounts you can set up to a default purchasing items if you wanted to. None of that was in, we never established any of that in Mass 500, so that's not going to be there.
Got it. Right. So in the customers and vendors, you were able to get the top level information over, but not necessarily the details.
Correct.
All right. And then I guess other things, just other configuration type items, like for example, payment terms. Have they been already set up in Global Shop?
Yes, I don't think it's to this extent where you'll see how many we've got here, but we've got basic ones, like a half dozen or so.
Got it. Now let's jump into some of the more fun stuff. And I think as a general starting point, if you could just kind of run through the different parts of Mass that you're using, for example, accounts receivable, so going through invoicing, credit memos, payments, accounts payable, same concept, working through, I don't know if you're using work orders or any other parts of purchase orders or things like that. If we could just run through at a high level the different parts of the system that you're using, that would be helpful.
Okay.
So do you want to start with, say, start wherever you feel comfortable, and we'll ask questions as we go.
Well, we'll start on the AR side. Are we taking this from a sales standpoint for where we actually get the order in, or you just want, we've got the order, now we're processing it?
Start with wherever you start within Mass.
Yeah, it's pretty much, and yeah, once the order's been received, we enter the customer in Mass 500, and then we process the sales order. There's no work orders that are created in Mass 500. We use currently a pick ticket as a shop floor work order. And then from there, after the order's been fulfilled, it'll go to the shipping department. They'll ship it out. That's a different section of the system. And then after it's shipped out, it comes over to process the invoice. So sales orders is entered, one of these.
It's a sales order.
Right. After the customer's in there, they'd go to the sales order section where they would enter the sales order. Bring one up. So they'll enter this sales order after the customer's been in there. And after it's been entered, they'll do this process order. Bad order I selected there. Let me get another one. So then they'll process the order and they'll create this pick ticket. They'll create that pick ticket, print it out, and that's actually what goes to the shop floor to either assemble the order or just fulfill it if it's a parts order.
Got it. So they enter the sales order, then they click that process order. It comes here. They create a pick ticket. This then is this printed out?
Yep. They'll print it out. It'll go down to the shop floor. That'll be their work order because there's no dollars on it.
Got it. So that's their work order. That lets them know what they need to do.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, it goes to the shipping department. Is the shipping department working within the system here?
Shipping department is not. Somebody that more than likely it is one of two people actually processing the shipment in the system. But they'll basically go to this same screen I've got up here and hit this edit shipments, and that'll take them to the shipment screen.
Got it.
So then they'll process the shipment there. They'll, I believe they enter this pack list information. Yep, they'll enter the information there. They'll enter the tracking number if there's one for this order. They'll print the pack list, and then that, as a bundle, after it ships, goes back to accounting to process the invoice.
So when it goes back to accounting to process the invoice, is that done right from the sales order to say generate an invoice from the sales order, or is?
No, typically all of that will be done, and they'll just go straight out of the process invoice screen. There's two in Mass 500. Let me get back to the AR. So they'll process the invoice here. They'll create the batch. They'll select the shipments from whichever paperwork they'll have there, and then they'll process the invoices from there.
So they'll do it in a batch manner. They'll look at the shipments and they'll actually select them. So is that how it's closing those orders? I noticed a lot of the orders were closed, but there were some that are open.
When I went back to that edit shipment screen, there's a little button that says commit order, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure, I believe once you hit that commit shipment, it closes that sales order.
I got it.
And I don't believe you're allowed to invoice until that's been committed in the system.
Would make sense. So there's a check there that someone is saying, yeah, I've shipped it, it's been committed, and that's a check to make sure you're not invoicing until something has shipped.
Right. I think once it does, it populates to that select shipment screen, and AR can grab it and select which orders they have to process the invoice off of. And yes, everything's done in a batch. The same thing on the accounts payable side. On the accounts payable side, they've got two methods there. They've got the POs that are submitted in the system, and the receipt of goods comes in, that gets processed. So they'll process everything in a batch like that, or they'll have a second option to just enter the invoice, like the utility bills that there's no POs for. So they'll have two options on that side, but same concept.
All right. Yeah, I think in a second I want to see that, but
Okay.
I get it. So so the invoices then are here entered in a batch, and then I assume that your customers pay you occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally they pay us. Once the batch is processed, they post it, and once it's posted, it's there set up in the receivables.
It is available in receivables.
So then after it's been posted, you go to this process cash receipts. And it's the same thing. It's done in a batch.
Got it.
So they'll enter a new batch. They'll select the customer that sent the payment in. They'll enter all the data for it, and then they'll process it. And that batch basically becomes the deposit slip.
So so you receive those payments, and then you mentioned that it becomes, so when you have the deposit slip, is there a separate action to mark those receipts as deposited?
Once it's posted, it's deposited. And we don't post it, we scan our checks in. I've got a check scanner for our deposits. We don't post the cash receipt until the checks have been scanned to the bank. And once we've scanned it to the bank, then we'll go back in and post the cash receipt. But sometimes checks don't scan, so we'll adjust the cash receipts at that time, just so it matches up with our bank statement.
So what do you do if it doesn't scan? Aside from taking it out of the batch, do you get a new check from the customer?
We just create a separate deposit for it. So say I had a batch of 10 checks, 2 of them didn't scan. I would go back into that cash receipt that they processed. I would delete the 2 checks out of there. I would post it because the other one's deposited. Then I would create a brand new cash receipts batch for the 2 that I am mailing to the bank.
Got it. So you're just going to mail those.
Yeah, I'll actually just save it, and I won't post it until I actually see the bank got it and deposited it.
Ah, got it. So that's going to sit in an unposted batch until which time you confirm that it's
correct. It's usually 3 or 4 days.
Got it. All right. And then I assume there are cases where you have to either write something off or issue a credit to a customer. Where do you go about doing that if you do need to?
If it is a early payment discount that they've taken, we'll do it right from the cash receipt screen. Once you're in there, there's actually a spot to do that. If it truly is a credit that they're taking off of a payment, then there should have been a credit memo processed already for a return, or somebody told them, oh, my bad, we did something wrong, we'll give you $100 back. There'll be a document and a credit memo sitting in the system. So when they post that cash receipt, not only will the invoice be there that they're paying, but the credit memo that they're claiming as well will be there. So everything will net out.
So is there an easy way within the AR system to either see or export, say, a list of any things that are not applied? So any invoices that haven't been paid, any credits that haven't yet been applied to invoices, or any prepayments or things like that. Do you have an easy way to get that, or a way to see that within the system?
I believe so, in that same Insights section. Explore. So right now I've got it set up to go already. This report gives me every open invoice. Now I did this particular one to only show me open invoices, but I could do open items so that credit memos are seen as well.
Ah, gotcha.
Actually, I think this has credit memos in it. I think about it. Yeah, it does. So you see how the credit memos are listed at the bottom here. So I've got it sorted by balance.
Yep. Same with if there's a, say, an unapplied payment, customer prepays or something along those lines. That
Unapplied payments will not show up here. For that,
Okay.
you have to go to run a report for customer payments and just do open ones.
Got it. So then on the accounts receivable, so so far we've gone all the way from the time an order gets placed. So the order gets entered. Just to walk through what we've done to make sure I get it. Create the order. You then process the order, create a pick ticket, print that out. When it then ultimately it gets shipped, someone goes in, they edit the shipment, they enter the packing, they get the packing list or the tracking information. Goes back to accounting. They have already committed the shipment, so then they process the invoice. They do that in a batch manner, shows them everything that has been committed, so that they can then just select those shipments, create the invoicing. Then the customers will pay separately. You'll process the cash receipts in a batch. You scan the checks. Once those checks are scanned, they're in a batch. Everything that has successfully been scanned, you then mark as, or you post it, that marks that as deposited, which gets it to the bank account. Anything else that didn't scan, you then separately will send to the bank. You'll put that in a different batch. Once you confirm that it's been deposited in the bank, you'll then post that batch. And if there are any credits or write-offs, if it happens to be a discount, you can do that right on the cash receipt screen, but otherwise, there's a separate place to edit that credit memo. And
that's correct.
And I think that's everything that I have related to AR. Is there anything else on the AR side of things that you're using or that we haven't talked about?
Not that I can think of on the AR side. I think that pretty much covers everything in a nutshell.
All right. So we started talking about AP a little while ago. Can we jump into that and see? Start with, say, the purchase orders, or wherever you start on that side.
Okay. Technically, the whole process starts in that parts and vendor system where they'll research what they're going to purchase. But once they figured out what they're going to purchase, they'll hand that information over to the buyers. The buyers will, if the vendor's already there, just enter the order. If the inventory item's not in there, that's when I said that it's coming over from parts and vendors. They'll manually enter that inventory item in the system that they'll be ordering. If the vendor's not there, they will send the information to the accounting department to enter the vendor, because we try to keep that under control with the accounting department to enter the customers and the vendors. So that vendor will be entered right here in this maintain vendor screen.
Got it.
Oh, I did forget to mention we do have customer numbers, and that's auto-generated every time they create a customer. The vendors are not numbered, and it's not auto-generated. It's usually just the name of the vendor. They just start typing it in, and however many characters you can fit in there is what the vendor name is, or the vendor ID, I should say.
Gotcha.
So they'll enter it. Accounting will enter all the data here, and then let the buyer know that it's there now, and then they can create their purchase order. So then the buyer will go into this section for purchase orders and enter their purchase orders. So they'll enter whatever it is that they're ordering. There are projects that we tie some of the POs to. I guess we'll get into that in a second. That would be tied right here through this tab. So they just bring up the project and they select the project, and that'll tie it to it. If we're not tracking it through a project that was created in the system, then they'll typically enter the customer or the job order number that it's tied to in this comment section, just so we have search capabilities.
And the job order number, is that different than the
Sales order number? No, it's always a sales order number.
Got it. So the sales order is always there first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, keep going, I'm with you.
Once they've entered that PO, they'll print it out or save a digital copy and either email it or fax it over to whoever the vendor they're buying it from. Once it's actually been shipped to us, the receiving department will then receive it into the system, and that is done. No, it's done under purchase orders. Yeah, it's still under purchase orders. They go to this receipt of goods section right here.
Got it, okay.
Process receipt of goods. I believe this is done in a batch as well, right? So they'll create a new batch, and every time they'll get the product in, it'll have the documents with it, and they'll usually 9 times out of 10 they'll have the PO number on there. They'll select the PO number, they'll select the line items for the product that came in, and then they'll save that. Now that does not get posted right away because there's typically errors in it. It'll go to somebody in accounting to check off on, just to make sure everything was entered correctly on the PO as the way it came in. And once everything's good, then they post it. And once it's posted, once that batch is posted, it's available for AP to select to match up the customer bill when it comes in.
Got it. So they receive the goods. Then what happens is there's a second layer of verification that happens to make sure that it's accurate. After that's done, then it's posted. Once
Correct.
It's posted, then at a different time you're going to receive the vendor bill, and when that comes in, you're able to match that up because it's been posted here.
Yeah, as long as it's posted, it's visible for accounting to see, to select it to match the bill up to. That would be done here. You've got process vouchers or process there it is. Well, actually, I think that's done under the purchase orders as well.
I got you.
Process vouchers are when they're just entering like utility bills. It doesn't have a PO for it under the AP section. Process receipt of invoice. It's still under the purchase order section, but that's what accounting would open, enter their batch, and select every one of those receipts to match up to the vendor bills that came in. That's how the vendor invoices are entered off of items we've received off of POs.
Got it. So in here, when they're received, and I'm assuming again that that's done in a batch manner like you're showing here.
Yes.
And match that up. Anything that's been received and confirmed through that posted receipt of goods is available. You mark, then I'm assuming that in that batch, once it's confirmed, it's then posted, and then the payable is available to pay.
Correct.
And the second method, which you mentioned, is utility bills or things like that that are not done through a purchase order. That's done under accounts payable in the process vouchers.
Correct. That's done under this section. Same thing, they'll do a batch, only everything's pretty much manually entered from here.
Now on the On the accounts payable side, are there recurring transactions that are set up in the system?
Yes, it's the same way as on the AR side. If there's something that we have returned that we get a credit memo for, there will be some document in the system that, same thing, once we're paying something, that credit memo will be there for us to select to apply to one of the invoices that we're paying.
Got it. So there can be a credit that can be applied here as well.
Correct.
And then, do you have reoccurring transactions, things that like monthly transactions?
I've got a few reoccurring transactions. I'll show you what I've actually got set up, like the monthly health bills. I'll do a batch and delete it here. So it'll just go to select recurring here, assign the date. Actually, I can just show you the recurring transactions now I think of it. Hold on.
All right.
Maintain recurring vouchers. So I would go here, I would select the vendor, UHC is one of them. So right here, here's an example of a recurring voucher that I set up for the United Healthcare, health bill that we get every month.
Got it.
And I pretty much do that with all the health bills. There's a couple of, outstanding loans we have that are set up as recurring payments. Not many. It's maybe a dozen in all.
A dozen in all recurring
It's not many.
Okay. And are there any on the AR side? We didn't touch on that. Are there any recurring transactions on the AR side?
No.
Okay. All right. So now we've gotten everything over to the point where the payables are there, and then I'm assuming then do you print checks? Do you do that electronically? How do you do it in the system?
There's two ways. Right here, process invoices for payments. Same thing. It's in a batch. It'll give me every outstanding bill that's in the system to select for payment. I can go through and select what I want to pay. Once I've selected everything I want to pay, I'll go to the check printing screen where we'll manually print the checks here. If it's a one-off payment or an electronic payment, I won't go through this screen at all. I will go through and I've got it set up. I've got it set up on my shortcut list, so I can't remember where it was, but here's my shortcut list over here. Process a manual check. So I'll bring that up. It'll do it in a batch, but I'll basically just hand type the vendor in. If it's an electronic payment, obviously the check numbers are assigned automatically based on whatever check number's next. If it's an electronic payment, there's nothing in the system that allows me to automatically enter what that payment number is, that check number, so to speak. So we just started out with 9999, and then we do the next number that's available to us under that 9999 number. So we'll manually assign the number, the check number, to something we pay electronically, and we'll post it that way after it's been paid. And usually I go here when I'm doing electronic payments, which we don't pay too many people electronically, or if I'm just doing a one-off check.
Got it. So you can come right here and process the manual payment that way.
Correct.
So on the and I think on the accounts payable side, that carries us through to the payment of the vendor. Are there, I guess, related to accounts payable and purchasing, do you track credit card charges in Mass?
Yes. The way we're doing it now we're trying to get POs entered for every credit card charge that they make. It's a process that happens months after we've already made the credit card payment, typically. So basically, I'll pay a credit card, and I've got one expense account that I've always applied it to. And then after we've done all the credit card reporting from everybody and we know what expense accounts we need to go, I'll manually go in there and distribute those to the correct expense accounts. Huge pain in the butt. Now, at the same time, the person that's processing the credit cards, when there's two things that are happening. One, she's matching up the POs that were already created for the credit cards, meaning it's already going to a correct expense account. In that case, she'll process the payment to a credit card bank holding account. We actually have it set up under one of our bank accounts, but it's really a credit card holding account. She'll process the payment to that, and then I'll net that against that expense account that I was using as a holding account for the prior payments that I did. That's how those are getting netted out. And if it's something that didn't have a PO, obviously that expense account just goes to whatever correct expense account it was supposed to go to. Very long, cumbersome process.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
We're going to refine that when we get in Global Shop.
Yeah. So right now, are the POs, are you saying the POs are actually getting entered well after the credit card charges actually happen?
Typically. It's not 100% of the time. Sometimes they're purchasing things. Like if they're actually buying, we do a lot of custom work, so they actually do buy a lot of materials with a credit card because we're buying from somebody we're never going to buy from again, so we don't bother setting up terms from them. So those items, 100% there's a PO entered before we'll make the credit card payment. But say now we've got a salesman, he's traveling, he's got his airfare, he's got his car rental, he's got all that stuff. None of those POs are being entered at the time they're making their travel arrangements. Typically what the person processing all the credit card charges will do is enter a PO for that stuff at that time, just so she'll have it to match up when she's selecting it all and paying it all out.
Yeah, so when you're so let's say when you're paying the credit card, are you going through the same process invoices for payment screen?
When I'm physically paying the credit card, no. I am just flat out doing a bank transaction, you know, and the expense account that it's going to is that holding expense account until we figure out where it's supposed to go later. So say I wanted to make a $15,000 payment to one of our credit cards today, I'll go to this process bank transaction screen.
Got it.
All this is you select the bank account, you tell me if it's a deposit or a withdrawal. In this case, a withdrawal, $15,000. Okay. There's no vendor I'm matching it up to. I'm just putting a note in there. This is the Chase Visa Visa credit card payment. And then it'll have me select an expense account to apply it to, which is that generic expense account that I apply it to. And then we'll do a general ledger account later down the road when we find out where that was supposed to go.
Got it. So you're just doing a general bank transaction to get it from your bank account.
General bank transaction every time I pay a credit card.
And then where is it that you're clearing out those POs that are getting put in?
For the credit cards?
Yeah, for the credit cards.
Well, she's doing exactly like we're doing when we're paying it out of a vendor invoice batch. So in a normal vendor invoice batch, when I'm selecting all the payments, it's coming out of our corporate cash account. We created that credit card cash account, so she'll do the same thing. She'll select that credit card cash account for what's paying it, and then select all the POs in this particular batch that they're always by month. So if she's doing the Chase statement per month, then she'll select all the POs that were created for the chase statement for month, apply it to that credit card cash batch. So there'll be a negative balance sitting in that credit card cash account, which will net against the expense that's already, basically the expense was booked twice. It was booked once when it was entered for the PO and that was processed, and then it's booked a second time when I actually paid the credit card and put it to that generic expense account. So I'll net the two together to zero it out once she does that, selecting the PO process and puts it to that credit card cash account.
Got it. So she's going through on the same process of
same thing. She'll select all those POs, all those. There'll be vendor invoices, but in this case, the vendor's all the same. It's whatever credit card company, typically.
Same vendor. It's going against that. It's going against an account that you're then netting against what you process the bank transaction against to make sure that evens out.
Correct.
All right. All right. So I think I get the credit card charges to the extent that or for how you're doing it now. So now, is there anything else on the accounts payable side that we have not yet talked about? I know we want to get into projects next. Yeah, but on the accounts payable, aside from the projects, is there anything else that you can think of?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right. So then I think the next logical place is then to jump into the project, see what you're doing with projects and how you're using those.
Okay. So here's the maintain project screen. We don't track every large order we get through the projects, but pretty much all the large contracts we get are tracked through the maintain projects so that they can conveniently tie labor and materials to that actual project in the system. I mentioned that comment field that they were filling out the sales order on. If we get a $100,000 piece of equipment order, sure, we want to track the labor and materials to it, but we don't create a project to it. We just use that custom or that comment field to be able to search what materials or what labor was for this sales order. We don't need to do that in the maintain projects field because once the project's there, you can just run a report by it. So we'll create a project number, which in our world is always the sales order number. Typically, they'll enter a sales order number for this large projects, and I'll take that sales order number, and that'll become the project number. Here's one of the newer ones. Which I don't have in there. So here's one of the newer ones.
Do you ever have more than one, like one project with more than one sales order?
In the past, we did not have a project with more than one sales order, but we did attempt to try and figure out the master project system in Mass 500, and we failed at it. Basically, we had a project where they had I believe it was a couple of trailers and a van, and we tracked each trailer and the van as if it was a separate project, and we tried to tie it all back to the master project. And it didn't work very well, but we did attempt to do that. We don't fully understand how it works in Global Shop yet. We got that guy coming at the end of April, so hopefully he'll iron that part out. But we've never had multiple sales orders for one project.
Got it. Got it. And on when you're entering, I know we talked about it for the materials and labor. On the sales order or on the invoices, are you specifying the project on those actual transactions also?
Yes. Now the sales order, once that's entered for a project, it's dead. It's no longer used in Mass 500. That's why that one sales order I brought up was canceled. That was actually a project sales order. So they canceled it because it's no longer going to be used. Everything else is going to run through projects. So all the materials that get applied to it through projects, all the labor that gets applied to it through projects, all the invoicing we do on it is done through projects.
So you're either running through the sales order or the project. You're not doing both.
Correct. If there's
Got
a
it.
project for it, we're not using the sales order in the system.
Got it. Well, you're still let me make sure I get it. You're not using the sales order for tracking the purchasing side, but are you still processing the shipments and generating the invoices from that sales order?
No.
Okay.
The only reason we still entered the sales order in Mass 500 was the naming convention. We always used the sales order number as the project number in the old system, and we just decided to keep that. So we generate a sales order number. We generate a sales order just so we can have that number to apply to the project, and then everybody uses that number from then on.
So from a project, can you create a shipment, or can you create an invoice from a project itself, or how do you do that?
Yes. You can generate POs from within the project. You can do the invoice right here from the project. You can enter timesheets right through the project. We don't do anything other than entering invoices through the projects. The timesheets we stopped keeping track of in Mass 500 just because we keep separate Excel sheets for all this stuff. Not only our projects, but our labor. And it became very, very cumbersome to do it in both areas. And I didn't see that nobody was looking at it in Mass 500, so I just stopped her from entering it to Mass 500. We've got a separate, really nasty Excel sheet that we keep track of all the labor on. And it's actually the same thing with the material costs. We keep a separate Excel sheet that we do double entry. We enter the POs and the material cost on that Excel spreadsheet as well. We should not be doing that in Global Shop. So once we run a project 100% in Global Shop, there should be no need for the Excel spreadsheet anymore.
Let me work my way backwards then. So you had mentioned for when you have a sales order, you do have, you go through a process of entering a shipment. When you have a project, how does that work from a process standpoint? Do you still have something to ship, or how does that work?
Doing a project, are you doing it off the sales order? Shipping it out of the system?
When we do a project, it's usually an elaborate shipment, and it doesn't really go in the system at all.
So it sounds like all the documents that were needed are created outside the system now.
Yeah, so the projects are more elaborate. So for the sales orders, they're not as elaborate. You're able to go through the process of entering the pick ticket, processing the shipment, generating the invoice. Projects are more elaborate. So essentially, you create the project. Everything is outside of the system, and then you will enter the invoices from the project itself when you get to that point.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, so here you're showing me the maintain projects with the information that you have about the project, including the project details here. What else are you doing on the projects?
I'll enter this estimate area. Well, there's a couple other items that I'll enter here. We do recognize revenue by percent complete. So you'll see percent of cost here for the profit recognition method. But it never worked, or we could never get it to work in Mass 500. So I actually keep a separate Excel spreadsheet to track that for me. I will enter an estimate, and you can see we tried to get these phases so that we could see labor and materials by a separate phase. But again, we could never get it to work in Mass 500. And the intention is to try and do that in Global Shop. We don't have as many phases as you see here, but there's like a half dozen phases that we're going to try and tie labor and materials to. But I'll go into Mass 500 and I'll create this estimate. So you'll see this sale was $561,000. We're estimating a total cost of $447,000.
Got it.
And that is the same numbers you will find on my Excel spreadsheet. And then from then on, we track everything on that Excel spreadsheet.
So really, right now in Mass, all you're doing is within Excel, you're figuring things out, but you're entering the total estimated cost, total estimated sales. You haven't really gotten the project phases working, right? So you have the project details, the estimated cost, the estimated sales.
Right.
And
the reason I'm still entering that estimate, the estimate portion, is I can't save so that I can invoice off the project until that's done. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even be doing it in Mass 500 anymore because we're not using it.
Got it. All right. So that's the projects right now. It goes through a slightly different path than your other sales orders. Most of it right now is outside of the system. You have someone coming in April to show you how it can be done in Global Shop, and your plan to start using it once you can carry that all the way through.
Yes.
All right. Anything, so the next thing I'm going to want to jump to is just going to be other general types of transactions, financial transactions that you're using. But before I get there, is there anything else you can think of on either accounts payable, accounts receivable, projects, or anything else operationally related?
No, I believe we've covered everything there.
All right. So the other types of transactions that you might use, including things like journal entries, fund transfers, things like that. Can you just kind of walk through the different areas, the different areas of the system that you might use on the financial transaction side?
Yeah, we'll start with the general ledger. I don't do many manual GL transactions throughout the month, but at the close of the month, we will try our best to. We created divisions. So there was the equipment division, there was the mobile division, there was the modular division, there was the pharmacy division. And basically, there's certain expenses that all hit what I call the corporate account. So the corporate account expenses, which will show up on the balance or the income statement as with a 0 in front of it. Those are expenses that I know hit the just general account that really need to be distributed to each of the divisions. And the only way we felt that it made sense to do it was based on the revenue earned by that division. So I'll create a massive general journal entry probably about a week or two after the end of the month, or the first of the month for the previous month, breaking all of those general company expenses into divisions. Not many other general journal entries we make, but that one's a massive one, and still need to figure out how we're going to tackle that in Global Shop. And I think the consensus was that we weren't going to bother with it anymore, because I believe Global Shop kind of does that for you as you're going along. And that's off the work orders we're creating in Global Shop.
Yeah. So so on that, when you say different divisions, like how do you segment divisions? Is it through the general ledger, or is
it's through the general ledger? So basically, the naming convention in Mass 500, you've got one digit. You got the natural account number, which we looked at. It was 4 digits.
Yep.
Just before that, you'll see an either a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. 0 is corporate. 1 was the high containment equipment. 2 was pharmacy equipment. 3 was modular. 4 was mobile. So those are the divisions in front of it. And then after it, you've got, after the natural account, you've got another 2 digits followed by another 2 digits. The 2 digits immediately following the natural number was the department. And I think we had like 10 departments, accounting, engineering, sales, manufacturing. And then the final 2 digits were supposed to be an indicator whether we were it was a direct or an indirect expense, and we never even made it that far, so most of our stuff just ends in zeros. So that was the numbering convention for the GL accounts in Mass 500s. You're not going to see that in Global Shop. You're just going to see the natural account number. All the other stuff goes away. Because basically all the work orders that you're entering for everything you do in Mass 500 is going to be tied to one of those divisions, whether it's a high containment piece of equipment or a pharmacy piece of equipment or a mobile lab or a modular lab. All those work orders will be tied to one of those, so we can do reporting by it based off of those work orders. We don't have to separate them on the GL in Global Shop the way we did in Mass 500.
So, for example, can you jump into Global Shop for me for a second?
Okay.
So now, say for example, we want to look at an invoice in Global Shop.
Okay, you tell me how to do that, and I'll show it to you. No.
Let's close
First off,
out
let's
here.
just look at the chart of accounts real quick. So everything's just that natural number. You're not going to see, like in Mass 500, the 0 dash, the natural number, then another dash, and then 2 digits, and then another dash. You're not going to see that in Global Shop, but it's just going to be the natural number. Now, everything in Global Shop, and I don't remember how to get there, but everything in Global Shop pretty much works around those routers and work orders. And those work orders are basically going to be tied to whatever you're working on. So if the pharmacy guy is putting together one piece of equipment, he'll likely have 1, maybe 2 work orders for that one piece of equipment that he'll tie all his materials and labor to. And overhead will be applied to it. That's why that overhead absorption account was made, because when you're entering a router that's tied to the work order, that router has your estimated costs entered to it. So that absorption account will either back out or add to whatever you're off. Everything's done by those work orders within Global Shop.
Yeah, so it all stems from the work order.
Correct, and it's tied. Those work orders are tied to everything we're working on. So every invoice that we have in the system is going to have a work order tied to it. And then all the materials and labor and overhead will be tied to that work order, which I don't remember how it works. So they create routers and work orders. They're kind of tied together, and the labor and the overhead and the materials all gets tied there.
To the workstations that basically wasn't a router like a step-by-step. Starts here, goes through here, something like that.
But anyways, that's in a nutshell how it kind of works in Global Shop, and why we don't need that GL separated by the divisions. If we want to run a report by certain type of equipment or a GL account, we can do that because all those, how they tie the labor and the overhead and the materials to each individual invoice.
Got it. And on the on Mass, were you different? Yeah. So you have the natural accounts, then you have the divisions and the departments and direct and indirect expenses. Were you primarily using that for, say, profit and loss, or were there anything related to the balance sheet, like that you were differentiating for different departments, receivables or bank, cash accounts, or anything like that? Were you differentiating?
Yes. The only thing off the top of my mind that I can think of that was differentiating on the balance sheet was inventory. I said we didn't track inventory in Mass 500, but I do to an extent. I make an estimate of the materials, the inventory materials that are on hand for pharmacy. So you'll see that on the balance sheet. I also track certain items on the high containment side, just because they're huge. If we make labs out of shipping containers and labs out of truck trailers. Well, we just so happen to occasionally order additional containers and truck trailers just to keep on hand before we actually have a project for them. So technically they're just sitting in inventory. Items like that I'm tracking, and you'll see those on the balance sheet. So you'll actually see that division number preceding the natural account number to differentiate between the pharmacy, which is a 2, followed by the natural number, and the mobile or modular lab, whatever. If it's a shipping container, it's going to be a modular lab, so there'll be a 3 preceding it. I'm not going to do it there because I don't know where it is, but I'll actually show you the balance sheet section I'm talking about.
Got it.
So there's nothing in 3, but you see the current assets down here. You've got raw materials. I guess I'll take that back. Everything that was in 0 I considered as pharmacy, but anything with a number in front of it, 1 in this case is high containment equipment.
Got it. So
all that other stuff I was talking about, tracking the containers and the truck trailers, they're assigned to jobs right now, so they're no longer here. They're actually in the job cost. But the 282 you see right here for raw materials, high containment, there's some really high dollar filters that they have to purchase for some of that equipment, and I keep track of those. So that is probably the only thing you're going to see differentiated on the balance sheet. Everything else is going to be a 0. And on the income statement, yeah, everything's differentiated. So the income statement's nasty looking. It's got all the departments and all the divisions mapped out on it.
Yeah, that's what makes sense. That's primarily where you would be using it.
Yeah, those inventory items are the only place on the balance sheet you're going to see that.
Does Global Shop allow you to differentiate the divisions for the inventory?
I believe there was something we can attach to the inventory that tells us whether it's high containment or mobile modular. We're not going to see it on the balance sheet that way, but there's a report we can run. There should be a report we can run to say what inventory items belong to the mobile modular side and what inventory items belong to the pharmacy equipment side. But as far as the balance sheet goes, it's just all going to be the one number.
Got it. All right. So then back to math. So in terms of the general ledger, the main thing that you're doing right now, you have a couple transactions you might enter within a given month, but right now the main thing you're doing is that couple weeks after differentiating by the division.
Correct.
So are there other, back to, I guess, math, are there other transactions that you're doing on a regular basis or even at all in terms of just moving funds around or banking transactions or things like that?
I don't believe so. Nothing comes to mind. I mean, I think we've talked about every section we hit in Mass 500.
And just to reconfirm, do you just have one company, or do you have it's just one company moving over to one company? You don't have multiple companies that we're
We have multiple companies, but I don't want you guys to worry about that. I'm going to manually move that stuff over. There's a company that we have inside Mass 500. So Germfree Laboratories right here is the main one. Germfree Mobile Laboratories is going away. That's nothing. Germfree Laboratories PTE, that's our Singapore office that we open. Very few transactions. I can do that manually in probably an hour. Obkel LLC, that's the owner's LLC that owns the building that we operate out of. Again, very limited transactions. I'll be able to handle that myself. Soon we'll have a new office in a separate company for a UAE office that we're opening up. So we'll have a separate company entered for that. But again, I'll just manually do that. That shouldn't be a problem. The Germfree Laboratories is the only one we're going to worry about.
Got it. All right, and then the other thing, just on in the ERP side, I think not the last time, but a couple weeks ago, we were talking, and I believe you had a financial consultant coming out to help with the planning of how the actual transition, the switchover is going to take place. And I don't think we spoke about that afterwards. Have you talked to the person at Global Shop yet in terms of how how the actual financial balances are going to get moved over and what the process would be there? And do you know what kind of support they will be providing on that front?
I remember the conversation, but I'll have to go back with her about. I think we just enter the balances, the final year balances, and then we start from there. In our case, we're going to have partial year stuff to enter. I know on the payroll side, it's just basically entering a check for everybody. We're going to try and go live at the end of or the beginning of April. Just entering a check for everybody's first quarter earnings. So we'll be able to start there. I think it's roughly the same with the GL balances. Obviously, there's nothing on the income statement side, but the beginning balances for the balance sheet should have a place to be entered. And then for the open outstanding items, they recommended that if it's not too many, which we really don't have too many, that we just have our folks manually entering the open items, just to get a little bit of additional training before we go live.
Yeah. So I guess on the financial, on getting the financial system to the point where it's, I'll say, financially correct. Mm-hmm. That's something that you're working with Global Shop on, and that, I'll say the responsibility of that's going to be on you and Global Shop, and not on us at this point.
Yeah, I'd say that's safe to say.
Okay. And when we look at it, if there's any things that we're doing that could affect financials, obviously, we would point those things out.
Okay.
All right. So for the time being, on the math side, is there anything else that you can think of? I'm sure we'll have some clarification questions as time goes by. But is there anything else major you can think of that we haven't looked at yet?
Not that I can think of. I'm looking at all the modules here, and I can't see anything we haven't talked about, or anything we don't really need to talk about. So
everything in U.S. dollars? Everything in U.S. dollars?
Everything is in U.S. dollars in the Germfree Laboratories company.
Got it. Okay. That's all we're worrying about right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the end of what we had for session 1 for understanding the ERP, and our brains on that side are thoroughly fried. But if you, it looks like we had planned to go into the CRM side after that. Do you want to?
We're in it to win it. Well, I was planning on a 2-minute potty break.
All right. Do you want to take a break, and 2 minutes enough, or do you want to take a 10 or 15-minute break and maybe call back in? Or
Gene said 15, and I do what Gene says.
All right. So let's say maybe 11 o'clock. I'll leave this open, and 11 o'clock. Actually, there's a different session that Dara tells me. So
yeah.
Let's jump out of that.
Into the CRM session.
Yep. So 15-minute break. We'll come back. We'll close out of this one, call back in, and join that other session at 11.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.